Hello, my friend. One of the greatest parts about Christmas is relationships. One of the hardest things about Christmas is relationships. You know, we gather and everyone has expectations, political differences, family dynamics, personality conflicts, and the craziness of the season can make us all like boiled up like a pressure cooker and like explode on everyone. So I've had time with people where it's really connective and I leave going, more of that, please. And then other times where I leave and was like, no more of that, please. And so we're going to talk about how do we make those meaningful connections for our part so that we can have more of those. Can we have some seconds, please? Number one, we need to remember the reason for the season. This isn't some cheesy billboard. This is everything. See, we're going to talk about some practical points after this, but I'd be foolish if we tried to do those other things without remembering this. We're literally celebrating Jesus this time of year. It is grace in the flesh. It is because of Christmas that the cross happens and resurrection happens. But when we get around people, we can forget that. They can make us angry. They could be talking about a different political perspective, which we know is dumb. And so then we treat them in that way. Or they have a different opinion on what's going on around us. And we can get in this point of judgment and critique instead of remembering the grace we were given. See, before you meet with people that are difficult this Christmas season, because we all have those in our life, and if you do not have those, you might be one of those. But we need to, before you go into those settings where those people are, fill up. Like spend time, connect with God, because it is out of our connection with God that all these other things will happen, right? It says that we are the branches, He is the vine, and apart from Him, we can do nothing. Nothing. Might be good to plug in and remember the grace we've been given. Number two, be aware of your expectations. Be aware of your expectations. Whenever you're meeting with people, you have expectations. Are you aware of them? This happened to me just last week. I have friends that are great friends, and I left just talking with them a little upset. And what I realized after the fact was I had expectations that I had not vocalized. Only I knew the expectations. They were not agreed upon, and I wasn't aware. See, this can happen often around Christmas. You have expectations. So does everyone else. You can't control theirs, but you can be honest about what expectations you have, and are those things you're going to run with? If so, you need to tell others, or are those things you're going to have grace in? Just make the decision in advance, but be aware you have expectations. Number three, margin. Especially at Christmas, because it's hard saying no to good things, we can overly book our schedule and be running around. And this thing I know, doesn't matter who we are, when we are squeezed for time, we are more irritable and reactive. And we don't listen very well. So to combat those things, we're going to want to create some margin. So look at your calendar. Is it realistic? See, I don't have time for much right now in the evening. I don't. My wife and I have to change off or help each other cook and clean. I have 3 kids in basketball. 3. That's a lot of carpooling. Like, that's what we do in the evening. So if you add another thing to that, it's crazy. Tomorrow night, my son has a game. We're going to be watching. In the middle of the game, one of my daughters has to get picked up from her practice. And about a half hour later, the other one has to be dropped off at practice. And somehow we're supposed to feed everyone in that time. That's just one sport. We're not even talking about Christmas yet. And so if I try to like lump a bunch of other things in it, it's just not going to happen well. So we need margin in the places that we can have margin. Number 4, anxiety management. To be anxious is to be human, and we need to be aware of our anxiety. And if you have this point where you are not listening or becoming reactive, anxiety is present. Because when we get in those moments, we're in fight, flight, or freeze. Here's how we get out of that. We notice that we're getting anxious. We name as concretely as possible what it is that we're stirred up about. And then you diffuse. That should diffuse most, but sometimes you need to be around people that fill you up, being places that fill you up, or doing activities that fill you up. See, this time of year, I do activities a little differently than other times of year. There's some Christmas things that reduce my anxiety. For you, make a list. What are they? Like this time of year, I like to do Christmas puzzles. Not really doing puzzles in the summer. Like things are going to shift. There are certain people that fill me up. There's others I love but don't. And there's others I am supposed to love but drain me. And so make a list. Just be honest. It's okay. You're human. But this is a way we can manage our anxiety, because when we don't manage our anxiety, we aren't listening to each other because we're all stirred up and preoccupied, or we're just fighting with each other. Number 5, active listening. One of the most amazing ways we can connect with each other is through truly hearing each other. Do you know why it's one of the most amazing ways we can connect? Because it's rare. We're usually not listening to each other. The lack of margin causes us to scurry around, or we're so stirred up with our own anxiety and thinking about our own problems, we're not listening. But that doesn't serve us well. We need to active listen. We can listen with 3 different postures, and there's one that is active listening, but I want to talk about the other 2 first. You can be tempted to interrupt. So that's your listening, but all you're doing is waiting for a point for them to breathe so that you can jump in and interrupt them with your thoughts on whatever you're talking about. And you can see this all around you. If you talk with anyone, you can tell when they're listening with that manner. Number 2, listening to hijack. So this is when you're listening to someone, but again, you're just waiting for them to breathe, and you're going to talk about the thing you want to talk about that's totally separate in conversation. That is not active listening. You are just waiting for them to stop talking. Active listening is listening to understand. I want to share a quick caveat with that. Listening to understand does not mean listening to agree. And a lot of us can get in a trap of, oh boy, they said something I disagreed with, so now I'm listening to interrupt. Because when they stop, now I'll tell them how they're wrong. But listening to understand is you're just trying to understand what they're trying to communicate. And I struggle with this because I have an active mind. And so I can fall into the listening to interrupt or listening to hijack. But when I stop in the moment and I actually just listen to understand, people feel loved and cared for. If you struggle with this, a tip is just, when you're listening to understand, say, hey, is this what you were saying? And repeat back to the best of your abilities in your own words what they were saying. And give the person opportunity. Because if they come back with, no, that's not what I was saying, well, ask, hey, could you say it again then? But if you hit it right on the target, they're going to say yes. And here's the thing, they're going to feel very connected and cared for. Just by simply you being able to repeat back what they said in a different fashion, sometimes that makes someone feel deeply understood. I don't know about you, but in this current environment, that is rare, to actually be understood. I hope these different tips help you to have meaningful connection, because that's the gift of this time of season. Have a great day, and God bless you and your Christmas.